What's up, everyone? Today we're going to be talking a little bit about how your brain works, or at least how I think your brain works. We're going to talk about the difference between rational beliefs and emotional beliefs to help you understand why you can rationally believe in something and yet not act according to that belief. Just take a moment to notice how often you believe in something and yet act against that belief. For example, you might believe it's good to be healthy and yet you binge on chocolate. You might believe you really want a good career and yet you stay at your shitty job. You might believe that you want to have high standards in a relationship and you should only be with the one who's a good fit for you, and yet you kind of avoid approaching someone who could be a good fit for you. I want you to just notice that cognitive dissonance, that difference between what you think you believe and how you actually behave. To introduce this topic, we're going to talk a little bit about something called the Triune Brain Theory. In simple terms, this idea that you don't actually have one brain, you have three that are all kind of conjoined. There's the reptilian brain, the brain stem right at the back, the same brain that we share with crocodiles and other reptiles. And that piece of the brain really only cares about fucking and eating. It just wants you to survive and procreate. It doesn't care about anything else. The next level of the brain, the mammalian center or the limbic system, is the same part of the brain that we share with dogs and dolphins and other mammals. It's the part of the brain that cares about community and about emotions and about connections with other people. It's the social part of the brain. And thirdly, we have the neocortex, that kind of porridgey, wrinkly looking covering over the top, where we have planning, decision making, creativity, looking into the future, problem solving, rationality. It's what you might call the human part of the brain that we share with only a few other animals, primates, a couple of birds, perhaps dolphins. It's a part of the brain that most other animals do not have, or it doesn't function in the same way as ours. And it's a part of the brain that creates rational beliefs. It's important to just notice what each part of the brain wants, because they don't always agree with each other. The reptile just wants to survive and it's not interested in anything beyond that, and it feels threatened by anything that threatens survival and wants to shy away from anything dangerous or uncomfortable. The mammal part of the brain just wants to be loved and it just wants to fit in. It's the same part of the brain that doesn't function very well for psychopaths. That's why they don't care about people. That part of the brain is more interested with fitting in than being honest or doing the right thing in the long term. It cares about what people think, and it cares about how you feel. It wants to feel good all the time. And anything that causes it to feel bad or to feel abandoned or rejected or not fitting in, it panics and tries to correct that, even if it's good for you in the long term. And the human part of the brain is really interested in your long-term future. It's interested in planning and doing things right and following through a set process like an engineer. It's also the very creative part of the brain. It's the thing that designs great works of art and pieces of music. It can think long-term and it can project and it can put cause and effect patterns together. And this part of the brain is often getting into an argument with the other two parts. Contradictions, hypocrisy, cognitive dissonance, all those things where what you think doesn't line up with what you do, or that you think two things that are separate from each other and conflict with each other, that is essentially these parts of the brain coming into conflict with each other. And the important thing to understand, according to the latest in neuroscience, is that the limbic system, the emotional part of the brain, has the most control over decision making. And this is why you can often believe something rationally, but because you don't feel it, you can't act on it. A great example for this is you might rationally know that it's not dangerous to go and talk to a stranger. They're not going to kill you. It's very, very unlikely. And yet if I was to take you out on the street and go talk to that stranger, you'll have a fucking panic attack. So rationally you know that it's safe, but emotionally you don't know that. You don't believe it, and therefore cannot act on it. Quite often we beat ourselves up for these contradictions. Why haven't I started my business yet? Why do I keep eating chocolate even though I'm trying to get fit? And we punish ourselves for this kind of lack of discipline, this lack of ability that we seem to have, this failure to follow through on what we promised we would do. But if you understand that the human part of the brain that knows what's best for you in the long run is just an advisor, not a decision maker, then you'll see that your behavior makes a lot more sense. What it's telling you is that while you do believe something rationally, you're not yet convinced emotionally. And so that final veto, that final decision in the committee comes down to the mammal, and if the mammal doesn't feel good about doing it, you're probably not going to do it. If the mammal is not convinced that there's going to be good feelings and good connections, and the reptile is not convinced that you're going to survive and thrive from this, then you won't do it. So this gives you some insight around what needs to change with your decision-making process to allow you to do those things that are good for you in the long term but don't feel very good to do right now. First, you need to keep the reptile happy. You need to set up resources and backup plans and safety measures to ensure that this is not going to harm you physically and is not going to ruin your chances for survival. A lot of people ask great risks from themselves without first kind of setting up some safety parameters and then wonder why they can't do it. If, for example, you're going to go to the gym, make sure that you give yourself permission to quit doing exercises that hurt too much, to not jump on machines that seem too dangerous for you, to only do the kind of exercises that you're at least comfortable, you've got the technique right, and you're not going to get injured. Another example might be, let's say you want to confront your boss, and your reptile brain's all worried about you losing your job and therefore losing your resources. Before you confront your boss, update your resume, get a few cover letters ready, get ready to apply for a new job and keep your resources going. Or if you wanted to travel around the world or start your own business, save up about 3 months worth of emergency money before you go, just so the reptile knows, hey, if things go to shit, we won't die immediately. However, don't wait to feel completely safe. That's a trick that the reptile's playing on you. This is why crocodiles just lie in the sun all day. They've got no interest in taking any risks beyond what's needed to get fed and get fucked. So when you're about 80% ready is enough, and that's about as much as you're ever going to be. If that's enough to satisfy the reptile, it will still feel a little bit dangerous, but it's also enough to get going safely. Secondly, and most importantly, the mammal needs to be satisfied that this is worth doing. Now that comes down to two separate things. One, it has to be somewhat emotionally enjoyable to do this, and two, it cannot be too socially risky. For example, if you wanted to practice being more honest and being yourself, a very uncomfortable thing to do, first do it with people that you don't know and make it a game. This way you're protecting your current social circle and your reputation, and you're trying to make it fun. For example, doing silly things in a public place, but travel to a town that you don't usually go to. Again, if you're going to the gym and you find that particularly difficult to do, maybe you're embarrassed about doing it in front of other people, or you find the exercise is emotionally uncomfortable, just break down the barriers a little bit. Maybe go with a friend, so at least one person there is emotionally comfortable for you, and only do the exercises you actually feel like doing when you're there. It's a lot better than not going at all. And eventually you can wean yourself off these crutches by building up comfort while they're there until the point going to the gym is actually fun for you. Well, let's say you want to do something bold and socially risky, like ask someone out on a date. Make sure you've got like a recovery plan afterwards. Make sure the mammal knows that if this gets too much, you'll back out and you'll do something nice for yourself. You'll go read a nice book by the fire, or you'll go hang out with your friends. One example for me is when I used to go to a bar or a nightclub and I'd go meet strangers, if I got sort of shot down and I crashed and burned, I'd go back to my table with my friends and just hang out with them for like half an hour before I went and spoke to the next stranger. So I had this kind of oasis of social and emotional comfort that I could keep going back to, and my brain knew that if things got too rough, I'd just take myself back there. And it gave me the courage to just branch out a little bit and then go back to my island. What's most important is to understand whenever you see yourself being a hypocrite or being contradictory with your behavior, where you're not doing what you said you were going to do and you're not living by the rules you think you should be living by, and you're not being rational with your behavior. This doesn't mean you're lazy or crazy or weird in any way. It means the parts of your brain are in conflict and that conflict needs to be resolved. Usually it just needs to be made a little bit safer, a little bit easier, a little bit more comfortable, and then you'll do it. You don't have to swing for the fence with every action you take. Your brain can handle a little bit of discomfort, so just find that level and do it only to that level until your brain starts to trust you more. The way I describe it is the human part of my brain is essentially training the other animals by showing them. What you can do is go, look, just go talk to that person a little bit and then you can bail out. See, that wasn't so bad, was it? You enjoyed that, do it again. And gradually build up courage this way. Thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed that video. Please comment below with your thoughts and share it around if you like. And of course, if you want help developing that communication with the committee in your brain so that it helps your long-term interests, get in touch, dan@brojo.co.nz, and I'll give you some tips and techniques on how to live by your values in a way that brings cohesion to these three parts of the brain. Cheers.